I'm not going to disagree with that. I
All
think
right.
I think customers have been burned since the early 80s by software vendors who sell very fixed, rigid, inflexible products.
Right.
And I think a lot of customers have never known what it's like to actually have systems that are as dynamic as the business world that they compete in.
Right. And what I'm saying is that putting AI into overly rigid business systems doesn't fix the systems.
Correct.
It's not going to work. So, what I'm saying is you need a flexible environment that can still execute bulletproof, deterministic transactions, hopefully automatable in ways that are deterministic and reliable. And then we can start looking at probabilistic AI on top of those systems. I just think there's no replacing that. Now let me add to the mix here because I wanted to put this in the mix. This week I wrote about a new study from PwC. Now, PwC did a big CEO survey, thousands of them. And what they found is no surprise, and a lot of media are going to run with this. Same kind of deal as we've heard before. 90% of AI projects don't scale, don't get past the pilot phase, all of
Mm.
this, right? But and they had some other disconcerting numbers too, like only 10 to 12% of companies report seeing benefits on the revenue or cost side, while a staggering 56% say they're getting nothing out of it. But a subset, 1 in 8, has realized both higher revenues and lower costs. And they say, what are these companies in this group doing differently? They're deploying AI more extensively across the business in ways that align with their overall strategy. For example, half the companies, almost 44% in this group, have applied AI to their products, services, and experiences. And so I asked, well, what if you want to be part of these winning stories? It's part of your, it's back to the enterprise foundation. So they say, PwC says, build your AI foundations. Mounting evidence that gaining transformational value from AI isn't about small efficiency gains. It's about transforming end-to-end workflows. And bottom line, it's about data, people, and processes, getting all of that right. And that's why I believe that companies like Acumatica have a chance to have real impact in this era because they don't provide that foundation for an unwilling customer. But if a customer is willing and wants to do the work, a platform like this helps to impose discipline on all of that. And that is how you're going to actually get some results out of AI. Otherwise, you're not. I'm sorry, you're just not. And it's coming. And I don't care how intelligent it's being marketed as, it's not going to work.
Well, I don't know why I was expecting more fireworks from you on this. I'm sitting here kind of going, yeah,
Oh,
and
you want
that
more
that
fireworks?
that
You want
I'm
more fireworks? Oh
well,
man, I'm getting really, really pissed off. A lot of people on LinkedIn are getting with me and basically saying that these systems of record are threatened by these disruptive agents. And I just said the other day, I was like, your probabilistic agent can't complete deterministic workflows. Do you not understand that? They're trying to say that everything can just be an API call to an agent. And I'm saying, go out and prove that because so far that hasn't been the case. Like people think that APIs somehow extract this incredibly intelligent information that allows you to do whatever the fuck you want with it. And it doesn't. It look, I mean, you can build a harmonized data platform across multiple applications and make decisions on top of it. I'm not saying, and I'm not saying that the incumbent vendors aren't threatened by AI to some extent. They are. And actually, I think that's good. I think the marketplace is better when people do feel threatened. So I'm not saying they're not, but these fantasies that all these systems of record are on their way out, it's just ridiculous. Like I said, these vendors have been clued into this for a long time. When was the last time you heard a vendor say, "Oh, we're a system of record. We're happy to play at the bottom of the stack with limited transaction value"? They are serious about moving up the stack and they have a lot of data from customers and they have the trust of those customers. And I'm just saying you're going to be crying in a few years when you see a lot of these vendors are being successful and even thriving. But like I said, they better be modern in that way that Acumatica feels modern. They can't just be these monolithic application stacks. They have to be flexible to your environment. And if they're not, then I do think they are in trouble. But I think it's good, this disruption. I'm just saying that stop it with these fantasies that these dinosaurs are on their way out and that anyone who's built SaaS software can just be like, oh, I saw a thing today. Is software getting killed by AI? I'm just so damn sick of it. And it's so misleading to buyers and executives who don't understand the technology and are taking their cue from Anthropic and Sam Altman over at OpenAI, who, by the way, have their own set of incredibly serious economic problems, and they haven't even shown they know how to be profitable, but they're your business mentors now. Oh my God. How was
Okay.
that?
So,
Was that
so
a little more like a rant? Okay, there we go.
yeah, I could definitely tell I poked the bear on that. I wasn't really trying to provoke you that much, John. But let's go with your premise for just a moment. I think there's like 3 levels of some of the ERP stuff that's out there in the marketplace. There's some really old stuff where there is an implied level of intelligence in the old app that it knew what the workflow was going to be. It knew exactly how it was going to pass data, control, and commands over to another module and pass it along. And it was going to, everything was in a long serial sequential kind of processing stream. It still has pull down menus. I mean, it's as ugly as they get. And some of the vendors in that camp, they're going to use AI as like house paint. They're going to slap a coat of some AI around that because they don't want to change that other stuff because they're going to have to do more than just open heart surgery. It's going to be heart, lung, liver, and everything else, and a brain transplant on there because they're you at some point you cannot modify things because the original design just can't support it.
Right.
There's that group. If you want to use a music metaphor, because I know you're an Arlo Guthrie fan here, would be Johnny Cash's song about where he had a Cadillac that was, every day, every time he went to work at a GM plant, he stole another part. And so his Cadillac was made up of stuff from like 40 years before it came out the door. That's what that kind of world AI looks like. In the middle, there are some players who had a reasonably current kind of product. I would dispute the old system of record because a lot of the data is compartmentalized still by function and it's redundant in a lot of cases. So the data is not as clean, real time, and nice as you might like it. They're going to add some AI stuff, and we'll see them come up with a little more slicker kind of analytics and other things because they'll do some stuff to pull this stuff together and they'll be able to present it. And the third group is someone that really has the app was designed knowing when they built it that everything from workflows, processes, and all this are going to be almost like a call deal. And the best of those will treat some functions like the way payroll service provider software works now, where there's a single engine that just does gross to net calculations.
Right.
There are some payment processing vendors that you and I never see these screens on this stuff because it just takes in an electronic request, it does its magic, and it spits out results on it. It's like a called procedure is what it feels like.
Sure. Yeah,
And
and I would say that like modern ERP will eventually be more like composable workflow libraries, right? Like you're saying it. I don't believe the category is in it for the long haul. It's the principle behind it that I think still is important. But like you said, I think ultimately those things should be much more modular and composable than they are today.
correct. And right now, old vendors with old products, they're the ones who are most vulnerable. So for all these idiots that are
Yes.
writing these brainless articles about the death of ERP or the end of SaaS and whatever, I wouldn't go into a hospital and announce over the PA system, every patient in here, you're going to die, because that's what these idiots are doing. That are saying these whatever it is that Chicken Little kind of shouting from the rooftops. That's not going to happen,
At the same time, though, you do make an important point, and around, like, so for example, some of the vendors you described have both, right? So they have a pretty compelling modern solution, but they also have a pretty big so-called legacy footprint.
Mhm.
And and I do think that the customers on the so-called legacy software, quote unquote, are more vulnerable to making different decisions. And all I'm saying is that one of the decisions those vendors, those old customers are going to make is not like, oh, we're we've outgrown ERP. Let's fast track to agents. That's not going to happen. What it's going to be is they're going to move to a more modern operational platform, whether you want to call it ERP or a series of composable cloud workflows, whatever it is. They're going to move somewhere. They're going to move their operations into a better place, and they're going to choose a partner that they think is going to help them transform and compete. And I think it's going to happen on a very industry basis, because I think a lot of this is about rethinking industries, and it's less about generic back office stuff anymore. It's much more strategic than that. And so I do think when you have a legacy install base that hasn't chosen to upgrade your software in a long, long time, you better go look in the freaking mirror and ask yourself why they have not done that. And if you can really still consider them a customer, even though they pay you, a ridiculous amount of support fees. So I do agree with that notion. I'm just saying that I think those customers are vulnerable, but not necessarily to the latest agentic startup coming out of Silicon Valley. That's all I'm saying.
No. Um, I do think that I do think there are some traditional, like, ERP vendors who started on AI way too late, don't have the capital or the bandwidth, whatever, and may lack the intestinal fortitude, the guts, the courage, whatever, to completely reimagine what their business should be all about and how the products really should be constructed. The idea going from, I have 5 core financial modules that I sell in the market: ledger, payables, receivables, fixed assets, so forth, to a company that's got a million composable apps. Like, okay, we got one that does your ASC 606, kind of accounting. We have another one that does payables payments. We have another one that tracks fraud in payables, invoice submissions, whatever. So we have all these different kind of components, and we also have agents that will connect and move everything around for you as needed. And it's all digital and it's all in the cloud. That's a whole different animal. And I think that's why I struggle with clients who want to buy something right now in the software space. They know they need something. I just don't think they know how to articulate what it is they need just yet. And even if they could, I don't think they're going to necessarily find it right now. So I don't know why
Yeah,
people are
actually,
calling for funeral services for old products. Says I don't see something that's out there right now that replaces it at the moment.
right. And actually it's funny you say that, because one of the things Ali said, to Ali Johnny said to us at the show was exactly kind of what you said. They said, he said about customers, they know what they want, but they don't know how to get it and they need it yesterday.
No,
Uh, I think that's a pretty good reflection of what you're saying. And look, like I said, I like vendors facing some market pressure, and I think this is market pressure that's being applied, and I think that's good. And I think there will be some new players, but I'm also just arguing that the incumbents have a lot of opportunity to remain if they figure out what to invest in and they're aggressive about it. I think it's going to be a mix, and I think Acumatica, for example, because they have the kind of customer stories that I described and you described today, I think they have a good shot of remaining a factor, even if you might argue that a few vendors are further along in agentic AI than they are right now. I still think they have a good shot. But it will be interesting to see how it plays out. No one has a perfect crystal ball. You and I know that. Um, and I'm not saying it's going to go just the way it's going to go. I'm just saying that we need to pull back from the hype machine a little bit and help customers make sense of what they should do next. Because one of the things right now that's very persistent is a gap between where customers are at and what vendors are pushing on the keynote stage. And customers can't be left behind in this mix. They need to be successful along the way, because they're competing in some pretty tough environments right now. And so you have to be able to do both. And I hope the vendors can get better with that because there's an overemphasis on this visionary uh, AI cotton candy stuff and not enough on the realities and how we're going to move people from point A to point B. And so I hope to see a lot of education this year. And Acumatica touched on that in our discussions, how they're planning on doing a lot more education around what partners are doing in the field, and partners are doing more educational programs as well. We didn't even get into the whole partner part of the Acumatica piece, but that's, I think, one of the reasons why I'm optimistic about Acumatica is they have a bunch of partners building solutions on their platform. I think that's a real healthy sign as well.
On that note, um, at the top of the call, I mentioned that I had a client who was looking to replace something, replace their ERP stuff. What was fascinating is why she's not going to go with the incumbent vendor they have, and that was because she said their old systems, their systems, even their new stuff, it feels old, it feels clunky, it doesn't feel like it's moving us very far. Now, what's fascinating or telling in that is, I know if they were at the Acumatica Summit event, they would have probably had a very different perspective of how much the market's moved, changed, evolved. But just looking at what their existing vendor has to offer, if they can smell it, feel it, touch it, and detect the lack of progress from their incumbent vendor, I have confidence and faith that there will be more and more buyers out there on the market who are going to be a lot more discerning, I think, than some vendors give them credit for. And they may not get all of the AI stuff they want in the short term. In fact, I could tell you this client is like, well, I'll use some of it in some limited areas for now. The biggest problem when we have those, we still don't know what the hell's going on at all the different plants right now. We need to get they've got basic plug and chug kind of capabilities that are still missing here in 2026 and they need it fixed.